Hello, welcome to the House of Wellness. I'm Luke Darcy and welcome to the team. Joe Stanley, Jackie Felgate and Dr Nick Carr. G'day, guys.
Hi, Daz.
Always good to catch up with you. There's been a lot of press and talk around dementia lately, Joe. It's one of those conditions that affects so many lives for people who suffer from it and for their families as well.
Oh, it's absolutely right, Daz. And as I get older, a lot of my friends have ageing parents and some sadly have Alzheimer's. Not that it's reserved only for the elderly, there's early onset dementia as well, and it's very, very hard for the carers.
Oh, it so is, and the numbers are staggering. Around 450,000 Australians are living with dementia, and it's the cause of more than half of all admissions into nursing homes.
Well, the good news is that a new drug is being hailed as a potential game changer for people with Alzheimer's. And this drug is called lecanemab. And early results from clinical trials indicate it may help slow down cognitive decline by up to 27%. And if longer-term data confirm these benefits, it will really be significant.
Victorian patients in the early stages of the disease and researchers from Melbourne's Austin Hospital are part of the trials, which saw 1,800 people worldwide take part. It's hoped the revolutionary drug could be available in Australia and globally as early as next year.
Yeah, let's hope so, Jack. There's a saying that the only thing that would survive a nuclear holocaust are cockroaches. I think we've heard that before. Amazing new technology is turning the critters into remote-controlled cyborgs, Jack.
That's right, Daz. It's been a long-standing goal of science to create armies of robotic roaches. Why, you ask? Well, to help do the things like find human survivors and environmental hazards in disaster areas. The insects are controlled by electronic implants, would you believe? But scientists have been stumped on how to power them. Until now, that is. Would you believe engineers have created a solar-powered cyborg cockroach that can be controlled and charged remotely? I want to hear what you have to say about this.
OK, so I thought you meant that it was a robot shaped like a cockroach. And then I looked into it, I'm like, no, they're controlling the cockroach through its nervous system, and it can go anywhere, and that is the creepiest thing I have ever heard. Because can you imagine little cockroaches coming into your house? No, thank
They're coming to get you. It really is incredible, Joe. Currents are passed through the roaches to make them turn, say, left or right. The next step is finding a way to fit them with tiny cameras and transmitters.
And there is some debate about the ethics of removing a creature's autonomy in this way, even if they are cockroaches, Joe.
Really? What about the ethics of stomping on them?
Anything that gets roaches out of the shadows and from under couches and out of my cupboards, that has my vote.
Well, still on bugs, and when you think of roaches or grasshoppers or spiders, most people's first response is definitely yuck and definitely not yum. But there's a growing push to make Australia catch up with the rest of the world and embrace edible insects.
2 billion people worldwide dine on the delicacies of creepy crawlies, from tantalising tarantulas in Cambodia to succulent silkworms in China. And the health benefits mean we're looking at insects in a whole new light.
Insects are on par with eating traditional protein sources. Protein is our body's main building block, so we need protein in our diet. Insects also have a high amount of fats that we also need for energy and micronutrients that are important for energy as well, like iron. If you are a little bit apprehensive about insect-based proteins, you don't actually have to eat them in their full form or even freeze-dried. You can get these in a powder. You can actually buy pastas and brownie mixes and other foods that have already had insects used in these by the food technologists and the food manufacturers. So you wouldn't actually know that it's made with insects if it wasn't for the label.
And with over 80% of people going back for seconds after trying edible insects, bugs are looking like a soon-to-be addition to menus across the country.
We're really lagging behind the rest of the world when it comes to getting on board with edible insects. But if there's going to be 9 billion people on the planet by 2050, as predicted, then perhaps we need to invest more in bugs. I don't mind it.
Well, Aussies love their seafood, and if you think about it and have a look at a prawn or a crayfish, they're really just huge bugs from the sea, and they don't look much different to land bugs at all.
You can eat your cockroach and your grasshopper all over the crayfish, I think.
The prawns, yeah.
All over to you, Nick.
maybe it is a mind shift. You know, kids eat snails and worms, and I've eaten snails in
Also to the
France.
French.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so maybe they're onto something. And of course, First Nations Australians have been eating witchetty grubs and other native insects since the beginning of time.
The global edible insect market is expected to reach $8 billion by 2030. The CSIRO released its roadmap to get more Aussies on board last year, so I think it's inevitable bugs are coming soon to a dinner table near you.
Just can't get my head around that at all. From creepy crawlies on our plates to avoiding creeps online, a leading cyber safety expert joins us next, right here on the House of Wellness. The big news lately has been about cyber attacks and hackers after our personal information, Joe. Optus, Medicare and others have been targeted, sparking fears about identity theft and causing major headaches for a lot of people in the community.
Well, there's been a reported 81% increase in cybersecurity incidents in Australia in the last year, which really does sound a lot. And with more and more of our lives happening online, the threat and opportunities for cyber criminals is growing.
And of course, we want to keep our personal data and bank accounts safe. And that goes tenfold for protecting our kids. And here to help us do exactly that is cyber safety expert Susan McLean. Welcome, Susan.
Thanks very much for having me.
Susan, the internet and mobile phones are really great tools, but we've also seen and heard about the dangers that they pose to our kids. How real is that threat?
The threat is real, and I think we need to make sure that even as adults, if our experiences online are primarily positive, that may not replicate with our children. So they're going to see things differently, the algorithms will push content differently, and in young persons' hands, they are a recipe for disaster.
So in your experience, how aware are most Aussie parents of these risks, and are there specific areas we need to know more about?
Look, I think there is a proportion of parents that are on top of this and understand the realities, but there are still a large number of parents that subscribe to the not my child. It won't happen to them. I trust them. And, you can't have blind trust in children because their brains are not fully formed.
So let's break it down to the various issues, because the internet is a huge space and there's a lot to be on top of. Yes. Grooming, for instance. Can you explain what it is and how prevalent is it?
Yeah, so if we talk about the term grooming, that's essentially describing the conduct of a sex offender connecting with a child and gaining their trust. Now, pre the internet, that happened one-to-one. It was a trusted adult in that child's life. The internet now allows ease of access to so many potential victims. So the offender will reach out to their next victim. They don't really care who it is. It's opportunistic offending. Engage with that young person, gain their trust. And this could take as short as 5 days. It could take 5 months. And eventually, when that offender has the trust of that child, they will convince that child to do whatever it is that they're looking for.
It's every parent's worst nightmares. And what I understand is that these people hide in the kinds of platforms that our kids use regularly.
Yeah, so every platform that you can think of that allow chat, that allow communication, can be used to groom children. They will gravitate to platforms often with limited security, full of children, ease of access to their next potential victim.
Well, I do know that the schools are very much across educating our kids about grooming, but what about cyberbullying?
Yeah, so cyberbullying is something that I've been dealing with since 1994. So I took my first report of cyberbullying 28 years ago, which seems like, a whole different world.
Did cyber exist then?
It did, but there wasn't much. There were listservs, bulletin boards and chat rooms.
Wow.
When I tell kids I predate Google, they look at me stupid because they don't understand that, there was a world before Google. But it's essentially a repeated action, so it's not in isolation, it's not an honest disagreement, it's not simple difference of opinion. But the minute we can see behaviour that is repeated and targeted and hurtful, we can use the term cyberbullying. And again, like grooming, on all the apps and platforms that young people use.
Susan, school policies vary regarding mobile phone usage, and sometimes you feel like at home you're putting as much boundaries in as you can, and then you get 400 text messages from your kids about certain things at school. Now they've got Fitbits and smartwatches. What do you think, in the classroom is appropriate in terms of usage with mobile phones?
So I think that a prudent school would have restrictions, because if you've got to for me, I come from a duty of care perspective. So when your child is at school, the school has a responsibility to keep your child safe. And if they're all over the internet being contacted by whoever, that's a breach of duty of care. So I think the schools now are coming to the realisation that they need to limit the use. So from the first bell to the last bell, no unsupervised access to tech, because that is a much easier way and a better way to control the risk of harm. A lot of people will say it doesn't really stop cyberbullying, and I'm with them. It doesn't, because we know most cyberbullying doesn't happen during the school day, but it's the content. Schools have big signs up, all strangers visitors must report to the office. But what about the random strangers that are coming into the school through technology? And you can't expect children to always make good choices because they're children.
How big of a problem is information gathering for the apps that our kids use?
It's a huge issue. And it's really interesting when I talk to parents about this, and they'll say things like, but does it really matter that someone has this data on my child? But data is valuable. And, when you download an app and it says, can I access your contacts? Can I access the maps? The answer should be no. Right? You can control it if you know what you're trying to control, but then who reads the T's and C's of what they sign up for?
It is such a massive, massive issue. There's so much for us to be across. But can you give us the top line information that parents need to be aware of?
Right, so every young person that uses technology is at risk. Never hand over a device to a young person unless you are controlling it. Have rules and boundaries in place around that tech use, and talk early and talk often. The earlier you start the conversations, the better. It's never too late to start, and make sure that your children know that no matter what, they can come and ask for help.
Well, you can tell from Jo and I, it's maybe the topic that, as parents, you think about the most, and you're trying to work your way through it. Susan, so your wealth of knowledge you bring, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Nick might be our doctor past, but he's always up with the times. Nick, just as we look for viruses and nasties online, we also need to give our bodies regular scans and clean-outs.
Absolutely, Jo. Now, one of the hardest working organs in the human body is the colon. It's part of our digestive system, and it's the large intestine responsible for absorbing water and removing waste.
You're teaching me a lot, Dr. Nick, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you keep it operating well with a low-calorie, high-fibre diet that's chock full of fruits and veggies.
Absolutely spot on, Jack. And while our colon is busy cleaning out our bodies of waste, some people, like Luke Hines, are keen to return the favour by checking in for a colonic cleanse.
Looking after your gut is so important to our overall health. One alternative modality you could consider doing to take care of it is a colonic irrigation. Now, some of the benefits can include removing excess waste, reducing gas or bloating, and an overall feeling of lightness and increased energy. JR, in its simplest terms, what is colonic irrigation?
So a colonic is when you cleanse the colon, which is our large intestine or our large bowel, from waste. So what sits in there is our stool, otherwise known as poo. We've got bacteria, yeast, undigested food, and all of the weird and the wonderful.
Now, from what I understand, there's different methods of colonic irrigation.
That's right.
And you specialise in Wood's gravity. What's that?
So Wood's gravity is a method where we don't fill the colon with any water. It's a very manual and natural way to have a colonic. And one thing I really want to make clear is that a colonic should never be painful. So whilst it's not the most comfortable procedure, the benefits outweigh that. So peristalsis are the muscular contractions of the digestive system.
Yep.
And they're like wave-like motions that propel the waste in your colon into the rectum and into the toilet. What I'm actually doing and what happens during a colonic is that we activate those muscular contractions. So we're stimulating bowel movements, essentially.
When we talk about gut health, we often refer to it as our second brain. There's a huge connection there in our immune system, our mental health.
Can you tell me, it's not just about what we eat, it's what we absorb. And if we've got our gut out of order,
That's right.
then we're not going to absorb our nutrients.
That's right. So a really big focus for us is ensuring that our microbiome is actually balanced, so our balance of friendly and unfriendly bacteria. So colonics are great for helping to clear imbalances and to keep our gut lining strong. And it's really interesting because oftentimes a lot of people think if you're unhealthy, that's why you need a colonic, but people who do lead a healthy lifestyle will still benefit and do need colonics as well.
And what is the sign of a good colonic?
Look, as a colon therapist, it's very satisfying to watch what comes out. So I like to see a lot of movement and a lot of gas come out. Actually, you'd be quite surprised. When a lot of stuff doesn't come out, that usually means we've got a lot of work to do. So a healthy colon is one that removes a lot of waste. All right, so that feeling is now we've moved waste into the rectum.
Have we?
But I need you to breathe. I think there's a bit of tensing, which is normal.
I'm also trying to work out that balance between releasing and not pushing.
That's right. No, you're doing well. Honestly, these are all normal feelings for someone having a colonic for the first time because it's very new sensations, but there's also a fear of the unknown.
So you're seeing waste come out?
I've seen a little bit. We're still working on the bigger stuff, to be honest, which we'll get to. Nice deep breaths, Luke. Doing great. Excellent. Nice deep breath.
So they say after you've had colonic irrigation that you can feel lethargic, lightheaded, but I feel the complete opposite. I feel so energised, like I could take on anything. I'm going to absolutely nail this day. Now, I almost feel a bit embarrassed that I was, nervous or self-conscious at the beginning because there was nothing to feel that way about. I felt comfortable the entire time. It was a strange sensation, yes. Uncomfortable? No, not at all. I feel so good and I'll definitely be back.
Nothing beats a good detox, although I am glad that Heinzie was the guinea pig for that one. For me, regular stints of giving alcohol a rest is a surefire way to give the bod a break. And while many Aussies upped their drinking during the pandemic, a growing army is saying no to booze for good. So up next, we go bar hopping to taste test the zero alcohol drinks being served at a bar near you. Back after this.
We are a nation of drinkers, no doubt about that, Joe, but that reputation, I think, is slowly beginning to shift. There's a growing trend among many people towards either cutting back or giving up the booze altogether.
Yes, I've noticed this myself. It's a bit of a shock because I quite like a glass of wine, but there are a lot of alcohol-free wine bars popping up around town, so there obviously is a market for it. And it used to be a bit of a novelty. There was Dry July, Feb Fast, but embracing an alcohol-free lifestyle permanently is taking off, especially with the younger people. But, I've spoken about my husband, Daz, before. He gave up drinking about 6 years ago, and I tell you what, changed his life, saved our marriage, made him a better parent, boosted his career. Couldn't speak highly enough of it.
And I think we're seeing this shift on social media as well, particularly with women, the memes about mums joking about sculling wine to get through the nightly kids' chaos, which I think we all do, especially during the pandemic. Well, they're being replaced with stories about how stopping drinking can really be life-changing, both for our physical and our mental health.
And it's recommended that people drink no more than 10 standard drinks a week, which is only around about a bottle of wine and a beer or two. And the standard drink contains 10 grams of alcohol. And what most people who enjoy a glass of wine, like yourself, Joe...
not just me. I think...
I'll go with you on
the
that.
assembled company, myself included. But what many people don't realise is that their extra large pour could be way more than just one standard drink. And some of those oversized wine glasses can take a whole bottle.
Well, the decision to go booze-free has opened up a whole new market for non-alcoholic drinks. And Dr Nick, while few parents would encourage their kids to go out and taste test a truckload of cocktails, I know that you've had no problem sending out your daughter Isabel on the trail of alcohol-free beverages.
On the surface, Brunswick Aces looks just like every other bar in Melbourne, but there's one big difference.
We're the first bar in Australia that serves no alcohol That being said, we do have everything you'd expect in a normal bar, be it beers, wine, spirits, just no hangover tomorrow.
The recent launch of this booze-free bar shows just how popular these products are becoming. Since 2015, global sales for zero alcohol alternatives have grown by over 500%. Thanks so much.
Really, everyone is trying to get more and more non-alcoholic drinks in their diet.
Brunswick Aces CEO Stephen Lawrence has witnessed this cultural shift firsthand. In 2017, he and his friends began distilling Australia's first non-alcoholic gin.
We were literally just 5 neighbours that became friends over a love of food and drink. One of our team got pregnant and another one started running triathlons, and so what really happened was that they would just miss out on us making cocktails and sharing that experience together. So we have an engineer and we have a scientist in our team. We put our heads together and decided that surely we can make the same kind of product with that same experience, just minus the alcohol.
So some people wouldn't understand the point of having a non-alcoholic drink, like a non-alcoholic gin. Why not just have a lemonade?
Yeah, well, what we've found is that no one has ever come to us and said, I really like this gin because the alcohol tastes great. It's always about those complex flavours and aromas that you get from the distillation process, in comparison to, say, a soft drink, which is very much based around sugar. So it's very one-dimensional and it leaves the palate quite quickly. When you have an alcohol, or indeed our non-alcoholic product, you're able to get that kind of front, middle and back palate blending together, and it's what lends it to pairing with food or even just a good conversation.
Now, working in a bar like this, you must see everyone sort of come and go. What would you say your demographic was?
It's a question we get asked all the time, and I still don't really have an answer because it is so wide and varied. We see a whole range of people coming in for a whole range of different reasons, be it someone in their 30s wanting to drink a little bit less and be able to get up and do yoga in the morning, or someone that's a bit older that's been told by their doctor that they should be drinking a little bit less for health reasons. 80% of people that drink non-alcoholic drinks also drink alcoholic drinks. So it's very much more about moderating and being able to have a couple of nights off the booze, but without losing out on your lifestyle.
With the growing success of businesses like Stevens, more and more Aussie alcohol producers are catering to this growing market. Mornington Peninsula Brewery owner Matt Beebe recently expanded his range of craft beers to include not 1, but 2 alcohol-free pale ales.
Whenever you're making a beer, there's sort of talk about 4 ingredients. So there's the malt, the hops, the yeast and the water. So when you're looking at Mornington Free, same process, but it's the yeast that's the different component. So normally yeast converts the malt or the sugars to alcohol. This yeast, the special yeast that we get, converts the sugars to esters, which is a flavour profile of the beer. Hence, you don't get any alcohol, or you get very, very little alcohol.
And were you trying to replicate the flavour of a pale ale with this non-alcoholic beer?
Yeah.
Was that really challenging to do?
Sure, I'd love to be able to say that if I had a pale ale and I had a Mornington Pale Free, that they were exactly the same. But they're not, because they're made differently. So there is a slight difference. But I think that if that's your option, that's your choice to have the alcohol-free, then it's a very, very good alternative. And especially if you come to the bar and you're the designated driver and the choice is to have an alcohol-free beer and look like and be part of that whole experience.
In the first year, the Mornington Free has become our second biggest seller out of all our products. Mainly driven by millennials and actually the older generations looking for an alternative to drinking heavy beers or any alcohol for that fact.
In Australia, sort of hanging out with friends, it's often synonymous with having a drink as well. Do you think there's still stigma around people choosing not to drink?
I think there is, but it's definitely changing, and having alternatives that are so like beer or so like a spirit actually helps that shift in people's perceptions.
While most manufacturers of these drinks are doing their best to mimic the taste of the real thing, there are a few refreshing exceptions. Melbourne's Aaron Trotman is thinking way outside the box with his wine alternative company, Non.
If you mimic, you're already off the mark. We're taking a much different approach where we're trying to show them something, a different way of thinking.
Aaron has collaborated with culinary experts to roast, toast and stew a wide variety of ingredients.
We're looking at floral, tannin, salinity and acid, all those things that you would know that are in wine, but rethinking it.
So tell me what I'm supposed to be tasting and smelling here.
So you're getting raspberry and chamomile on the nose. We use fresh raspberries, so we get a nice tart profile and flavour in there. You'll get the chamomile in the finish and a salty back end as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It has a really full flavour profile, and yet it tastes nothing like wine. It's definitely not trying to be a wine. It's something of its own.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Rish, you've come on as the General Manager of Non. Where do you see it going in the future? What would you like to see for Non in, let's say, 10 years' time?
So in an ideal world, I think non-alcoholic should be fully embraced by all cultures. If someone's asking why you're not drinking, we should be asking why you are drinking. I think no one asks the question to a vegetarian why you're not eating meat. It doesn't exist in our culture anymore, and I'd like the non-alcoholic to get there as well.
We see that this category is here to stay and will be as established as the alcoholic one in, perhaps just 5 or 10 years.
Well, cheers to that.
Indeed.
I know that you'd agree with me that our culture revolves around going to pubs and clubs, so the fact that people can still enjoy their favourite tipple without the alcohol, I think is brilliant. And I will say, when Daz gave up drinking, he was hassled for not drinking alcohol by some of the people in his circles. So it's just great that non-drinkers can hang out with their friends and have an option and not feel pressured.
Absolutely. It's true that people don't talk about the alcohol taste when ordering their favourite drink, obviously. I haven't actually tried it. I tend to enjoy a glass of wine with dinner most nights, but I think I'm trying to cut back and perhaps be more responsible about it.
Well, I think the alcohol-free days are a really important part about it, which is what you were saying, Jo. And the health benefits of taking a break, either short-term or permanently, or cutting back, are actually really well documented. You'll lose weight, you'll sleep better, and have loads more energy.
Well, I think when you look at the way the Europeans consume alcohol with a bit of balance and consistency, not a bad path to follow. Well, someone who has energy to burn is Australian cricket star Rachel Haynes. The champion player has us all batting for better health right after this.
Stress is when something happens that we can't manage or control. It is how we feel when we're under pressure. When stress is left unmanaged, it can create anxiety and mood problems. It can also result in physical symptoms such as tension headaches and migraines. And unfortunately, it can also interrupt sleep and cause many restless nights. When it comes to health, Mother Nature provides us with an amazing array of herbs. Medicinal herbs such as kava, ashwagandha and St John's wort can help provide great support. The aerial parts of St John's wort, which are the yellow coloured flowering tops, is what gives St John's wort its activity in combating stress. In the yellow flowers, you have a substance known as hypericin, which is the active ingredient. Hypericin is what drives St John's wort in its nervine activity. A nervine is the name given to a substance that helps to support the nervous system, which is what we need when it comes to dealing with the symptoms of stress. St John's wort is known to help reduce the symptoms of mild anxiety and to support healthy mood balance. With over 70 years of herbal expertise, Thompson's is continually seeking how herbs work to drive better health outcomes and to deliver a range of healthcare benefits to support a healthy lifestyle.
Well, Das, I'm sure you'd agree that finding ways to de-stress is one of the #1 goals that people have, and more often than not, it's actually mental health concerns that drive a visit to the GP.
Yeah, and you hear the World Health Organisation say by 2030 that anxiety-type issues are going to be the #1 problem for mankind. We've spoken a lot about meditation as a go-to and something I do every day, a big part of my life that helps me, I think, keep a bit more of an even keel, Jo, although you've seen it occasionally tip over the other way. But it's...
You're only human.
But if anything is going to give me a mental boost and make me feel great, I'd have to say it's sport. Even the days of playing footy are long and gone, but I think that was probably me at my healthiest.
We all love our sport, Das. It's such a big part of our national identity in Australia. And for my husband, Daz, and I, we're always encouraging our daughter Willow in her sport. She loves footy, basketball, gymnastics. She just started gymnastics. Why wouldn't you? But we all want our girls to not just get into it, but to stick with it for life. And when it comes to female role models knocking sport for six, they don't come much better than cricket champion Rachel Haynes.
It's strange to think that a skill-based sport is so influenced by where you are mentally in any particular time. So, you know, if you don't want to face a particular bowler or you're struggling to score as a batter out in the middle, if you're focusing on those things, you're completely distracted away from actually what you need to do in that moment. And yeah, there's some really valuable lessons in there. I think I wish I had learnt them earlier in my career, but yeah, I think the mental side of the game is hugely valuable. I think my family played a really big role initially. Neither of my parents played, but it was always something we did when we came together at big family events. We'd end up in the backyard hitting cricket balls and taking the mickey out of each other and running around. So for me, that just sparked a great love of the game. When the score didn't matter, it was more all the silly things that happened in between. It wasn't until I was about, I think, 12 years old and I got to meet the Australian women's cricket team on the MCG. So players like Belinda Clark, Mel Jones, Catherine Fitzpatrick, Joanne Broadbent, who went on to coach me as I sort of came up through New South Wales. Yeah, pretty much from that moment on the MCG, I was just, my goal, my ambition was to try and make that team. I really struggled initially to break into the Victorian senior side, and I watched a few of my friends debut before me and I was so envious of what they were able to do. But when I did, things happened really quickly for me, and to think I made my debut for Australia at Lords, probably one of the most iconic cricket grounds in the world. Yeah, from that moment, it's like, wow, I'm living my dream here. I want to make the most of this and just, you know, hopefully it rolls on for as long as possible.
Yes, she gets it. Slashes through, point for four, and Rachel Haynes brings up 100. Elise Perry runs to her.
I love the challenge of being able to adapt across different formats, and you know, traditionally we've done that a lot between T20 and one-day cricket, but changing gears for Test cricket as well is so different to the other two formats. And you know, administrators have done a really good job trying to grow the game, and they've used T20 cricket to do that, which, you know, there's no doubt that it's really got it a lot more present and visual on people's TV screens and those sorts of things. But from a playing perspective, we love Test cricket. So, yeah, the players would definitely like to see the balance of Test cricket increased in our calendar.
Haynes able to drive this time, over pitch by Brunt, and what...
Probably the thing that I've valued as I've gotten a little bit older across my career is my physical preparation and how I look after my body and how I switch off as well during times where we've got a little bit of downtime. So, yeah, I put hours and hours every week into my physical preparation, and, you know, not necessarily just doing all these hard sessions and volume sessions, but looking after my body too and stretching and making sure I recover. You know, being able to execute your skill and train, they're probably some of the more enjoyable things that you get to do. But yeah, the physical side, it requires a real, I guess, disciplined approach. But yeah, also it's not without having its moments of fun as well. From my perspective, I've always loved sport, and as a kid growing up, I tried everything from basketball to tennis to soccer to netball. I just absolutely loved being involved in a team, and I really thrived on that. But I feel confident that I'll be able to find that in other ways when I do finish. But yeah, I'd like to think when I retire, I've still got a contribution to make just off-field instead of on-field.
And that doesn't look like a great start. Oh, what a catch! What a catch from Rachel Haynes! Well, that will take some beating.
I guess if you go into the past, it's about educating people as well on these different female stories and showing the contribution that they've made. And quite often, a lot of successful past female players have gone on to have amazing administrative or coaching careers as well. So their story is there and their contribution and the significance of it is there. It's just a matter of sometimes having to show people what these women have done. You know, one that comes to mind, Elise Perry scoring 200 at North Sydney Oval, you know, capturing that moment eventually in time will be, you know, absolutely fundamental, you would have thought, to sharing some of the history of the women's game.
played.
Yeah, I even reflect back to being a young girl, and I grew up in Melbourne and going to the MCG, and as you're walking in, you're seeing these amazing, iconic sculptures and, you know, asking mum or dad, oh, who is that person and what did they do? And they tell you the story. So, yeah, it's really important, that symbolism and showing young girls and boys that women belong and have done some fantastic things.
Ella, as a makeup artist, ingredients are really important to me as I work with such a range of skin types. And we could all do with breaking up with some toxic relationships, whether it's beauty or life, right?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, moving forward, I just want to get away from toxic and unhealthy relationships and move more toward natural and toxic-free. I think it's great that Nude by Nature are now 100% natural, and, you know, I'm really hoping that that's the way relationships are going to go for me.
Yeah, I'm putting that out there. Let's stay positive.
Let's stay positive.
Common mascaras contain some things that I didn't even know. So we're talking coal tar, carbon black, synthetic pigment and dyes, all things that have no place being near your eyes.
What I love about Nude by Nature's Absolute Volumizing Mascara is that it's Australia's first volumizing mascara that's 100% natural, as well as vegan, cruelty-free, and suitable for sensitive skin, which is what I have. So ingredients included are poppy seed oil and kakadu plum. It's also clinically proven to increase the appearance of lash volume.
So it's like getting the best bits out of your relationship, the support, the laughter, the affection, without the fights.
That is the dream. And Nude by Nature are making that a reality. I can't say that I'm done with breakups, but I can say that I'm done permanently with toxic makeup.
Thanks, Jade and Ella. Well, one thing I have a love-hate relationship with is sleep. At night, there's nothing I want more, and my goodness, it tortures me when I don't get enough. Yet for something we spend a third of our lives doing, sleep issues can be a waking nightmare. So here's Heinzie and Sarah to help guide us into the land of Nod.
Now, don't laugh, Sarah, but no, wait for it. One of my favourite pastimes is sleeping. The sweet spot for me is like 9 hours and I'm in heaven.
Oh, I'm not laughing, Heinzie. I love sleep too. Have you seen my sleep face?
Okay, I am obsessed with your sleep face. It is so good. You've actually never looked better. Now, even though you and I absolutely nail it in the sleep department, did you know that 2 out of 5 Aussies struggle with sleep on a regular basis? That is 40% of the population.
And for those sleep-deprived people, let me introduce a mineral that may help: magnesium.
Essential for more than 300 processes in the body. In the sleep space, magnesium plays a role in sleep regulation, plus calming the muscles and nervous system, preparing us for rest.
If you're deficient in magnesium, you may have trouble falling asleep or experience restlessness. Sleep is such a big part of our broader health, so anything we can do to get a better night's shut-eye, I am not shutting that down.
Thankfully, a balanced diet helps increase magnesium levels, but you can turn to supplementation for additional support if dietary intake is inadequate.
That's right. Speak to your pharmacist for specially formulated support. Look out for the well-absorbed magnesium Ultra Musclease Night for supporting healthy sleeping patterns.
I'll nap to that.
I will nap to anything, Heinzie.
I'll raise you one and I'll nap on this concrete.
Challenge accepted.
Okay, if you want to. Oh, that's good, isn't it? You didn't tell me you snored.
The A to Z of Vitamins is brought to you by Bioceuticals Ultra Musclease Night, for specially formulated muscle and sleep support. Found exclusively behind the counter, ask your pharmacist for Ultra Musclease Night.
It
is no secret that the French know beauty, and my hair will forever be in their debt for the invention of Clarins dry shampoo range. Kind to the environment as well as our time-poor lives, dry shampoo helps refresh hair between washes. Keep the good hair days going through extending the life of any hairstyle while also maintaining the hair's natural oils, preventing dryness and breakage. Clarins dry shampoo range includes 4 different plant-powered options, each formulated with a unique key ingredient to answer your specific hair condition. There's the dry shampoo with oat milk, Australia's #1 dry shampoo. This cult classic is the ultra-gentle choice to cleanse sensitive scalps and add texture while softening the hair. The dry shampoo with nettle is the OG, created back in 1971. It helps reduce sebum production and absorb excess oils. The dry shampoo with organic aquatic mint is perfect to use after a gritty workout, with its fresh mint scent and gentle scalp detoxification. And finally, the dry shampoo with organic flax. It's ultra-volumizing through lifting and supporting fine flat hair from the roots. Our hair is often an extension of our personality, so say au revoir to the part of you that's oily and flat, and bonjour to your refreshed, voluminous self that's just magnifique.
Well, for a long time, we've known about the benefit of green spaces, and I think that became all too real during COVID after living inside for so long. Parks and gardens never ever looked or felt so great, Jo.
Oh, absolutely. The effects of greenery on our mental health and well-being is well documented. We simply, I think, just feel better when we're in nature. But wait, there's more. Blue spaces are just as beneficial. Research out of the UK shows that a visit to blue spaces could also increase physical activity levels and decrease stress and anxiety. What is this?
Now, I hadn't actually heard about blue spaces before, so this is really interesting because most research into nature exposure and its long-term effects have been focused on the green or natural spaces, whereas this study found that childhood exposure to blue spaces can lead to benefits as an adult. And it's not just about getting wet, it's the sensory qualities, the sounds of the waves and the colours and the light reflections. And quite apart from all the physical activities that go with it, such as swimming and water sports, it's fantastic.
OK, that's it. More time by the sea, lakes, rivers, the coast, and more holidays. I absolutely agree. I didn't need a study to tell me that. I get such a hit from being by the water. I live by the sea. I love it.
100% with you on that one, Jack. I feel the same. Well, that's our show for today. To Jo, to Dr. Nick and to Jack, I look forward to catching you all right here again next week.
Tune into the House of Wellness radio show this Sunday with me and Gerald Quigley.
And grab a copy of The Weekend Lift Out with the always camera-ready Delta Goodrem on the cover.
Thanks as always to our great friends at Chemist Warehouse. We'll see you again soon.